I would like to show you a somewhat different perspective. I'm a geologist, I do petrology, and I would like to show you how, from our point of view, we see the problems related to heat generation and heat transfer in lithosphere. And I will show you an example from Cameroon. And what I'm going to present is an effort of, an effort of a larger group of people, which is an effort of a larger group of people. And I will divide my presentation into three parts. First, I would like to make a short introduction, and the intention of this introduction is to show how it works at the contact between heat geophysics and petrology. Second, I will try to show you what is going on new in petrology regarding temperatures. And finally, there will be short conclusion and very short perspective. Before I start, I would like to stress I'm a petrologist. My research starts when I have a piece of rock in my hand. And this is somewhat different from typical geophysical research. And I'm working on mantle lithosphere. So this means that my research is based on xenoliths, which are brought to the surface by alkaline volcanoes. And this is two major limitations which are, I would say, fundamentally different from typical heat geophysics. And well, to start, I would like to show this very basic sketch. If you look at the continental lithosphere, you see that it is different between young areas and old areas. In Archean, you have thick lithosphere, thick mantle lithosphere. When you go to Phanerozoic areas, lithosphere is around 100, 120 kilometers thick. Its mantle part also is much thinner. Proterozoic areas are somewhat in between. Neoproterozoic is rather similar to Phanerozoic. Paleoproterozoic is rather similar to Archean. Well, when you ask average geologist about heat in the lithosphere, the idea usually is very, very general. So what we know is that the best way to show the relationship between depth and temperature are geotherms. We know that geotherms are related to the age of the lithosphere you are dealing with. We know that there are several different models. And also, I think the basic information is that when you are at the oceans, you have beautiful, almost linear relationship between heat flow and age. When you go to the continents, the problem starts. And this problem, I think, is summarized. This is the situation of Fulong and Chapman. Continental lithosphere is complicated. It's a mixture of almost everything you want. And the consequence is that you have problems when you try to present a model. And what I think is important from petrological point of view is these geotherms are in fact hypothetical models. And also when I think about the mantle lithosphere, there's no regional classification or regional scale models of what is going on regarding heat in mantle. When we think about what we have do in common, is the typical interference between petrology and heat geophysics is that we take our xenoliths, we are able to calculate pressure and temperature at which they have been equilibrated, and this can be used to fix geotherms. And one of the many examples is presented here. But we have a problem with that. To calculate established pressure and temperature, you must be in a mantle part which contains garnet. Garnet occurs rather deep. And the consequence is that we can do this kind of calculations for archaic and paleoproterozoic areas because they are thick and they have garnet. but Phanerozoic parts of mantle are practically excluded. We have no pressure information. Well, and this is, I would say, this is the countryside which we have to live in. And now I would like to take you to, for a short excursion to Cameroon and Africa. I'm going to speak about the volcanoes which are making the Cameroon Volcanic Line. It is more or less here. This is the part of Africa. This is Neoproterozoic orogenic belts, which originated during the formation of Gondwana. And when you look, have a closer look at this area, you see that volcanoes are stretching to the Gulf of Guinea. Then you have continental part. My example comes from Oku volcanic group. And I prepared a schematic cross-section of going more or less like this, based on many published geophysical, seismic, and gravimetric data. And this is practically very simple. You have Congo craton, which is a good craton, which is thick, thick coat with relatively thick crust. When you go to the Cameroon Volcanic Line, you enter the Central African orogenic belt. Here, surprisingly, your lithosphere is thin. The seismic logs shows something around 100 kilometer, 110. And also there are models which show that beneath the volcanic centers, there are some updomings of asthenosphere which make the lithosphere thinner down to, let's say, 90 kilometers. So this is the framework. And, well, mantle lithosphere is peridotite. This is a rock which is simple. Olivine, 2 pyroxenes. If you are in Phanerozoic or Neoproterozoic area, you have spinel. What I'm going to show you is pieces of mantle which are young, which have been brought to the surface by eruption which is less than 500,000 years. And a short introduction into pathology. We calculate our temperatures taking into account the exchange of elements between coexisting minerals, and which must be in equilibrium. This is a very important claim. And for me, very attractive pair is orthopyroxene, clinopyroxene. This is because we have 2 well-calibrated means of temperature calculation. First one is on major elements. The second one is on rare earth elements. This one is called Bray and Keller. It is known from 1990s. This one was calibrated by Liang and al. It was some 10 years ago. The beauty of this mineral pair is that diffusivity of major elements in the lattices of pyroxene is 1 or 2 degrees of magnitude faster than the diffusivity of rare earth elements. This gives us the possibility to look at the kinetics. But we have also the problems. These pairs of thermometers are commonly used, but I'm sorry to say, people usually do not care about 2 things. About the quality of analytical data, you must have really good data to have good calculations. And also it is pretty common that equilibrium assessment, which is, let's say, painful. You must sit at the microscope and look at the minerals. The people don't like it. And usually they do it untidy. Well, so there's many data published, but they are not always of the highest quality. And we made an exercise calculating temperatures using these 2 thermometers for peridotites which occur beneath the Cameroon Volcanic Line, beneath Oku. And when you look at this table, you see that temperature calculated for major elements and for rare earth elements are practically identical. This means that these rocks are very well, I would say, baked. They resided long. And the opposite example is this one. This is a rock which occurs in the mantle. This is a xenolith, but this is a deposit of the lava which poured out during the Cameroon volcanoes. And here it is pretty young. This volcanism was active, let's say, from 30, in majority, less than 15 million years to recent. So, and here we see a large discrepancy. Rare earths give 1100 degrees of Celsius, major elements give 940 or something like that. But this is the temperature information we can get doing this kind of calculations. Now let's look on petrology. We made 2 studies on this. In fact, this is partly published. And from petrology, we know that these rocks, which are depicted here, were formed in this field of pressure of temperature. And this was more or less a process where we had a solid framework of the rock, which was infiltrated by the melt. It is depicted schematically here. And please note that temperatures we got are not here, they're here. We have had cooling. So the conclusion, the first conclusion from this, what I'm presenting you, is that we have long cooling after this melt percolation event. There happened something in this rock, melt percolated, and after that the rock was cooled. We have record of accidental diking in this lithospheric mantle, but this was accidental. In fact, in over 40 xenoliths, we have found one which can be geochemically related to the volcanism on the surface, so it's not very common. And this is well fitting with both petrological observation we have, also the geological independent observation showing that Cameroon volcanism has practically all comes from asthenosphere. It has little to do with lithospheric part of this structure. I will not comment on this, but I would like to go to the conclusion. I come back to this cross section, and what I want to say that we have a lithosphere located at the region where the lava is supplied to volcanoes, but our samples show us that this lithosphere, this lithospheric mantle, was very quiet, was very stable thermally. There was no thermal disturbance visible in these rock pieces, despite they were migrated by lavas. With this approach, which I showed, it is possible to distinguish the mantle lithosphere, which is very well equilibrated, which comes from the steady state, from something which is not equilibrated. And I have no time. Analogous terrains can be found in Europe. And in Europe, there's a very clear pattern of areas which show similar feature of well equilibration. And the features, the peridotites which are not equilibrated, which give different temperatures regarding rare earths. I will get at this one. We have the pattern of areas with lithospheric mantle which are well equilibrated in terms of these 2 thermometers, and which are not equilibrated, so you have systematically different temperatures based on rare earths and based on major elements. This is a conclusion. I think this is very prospective to make some schematic classification of mantle lithosphere. And we must work on it, and the perspective is more work. Thank you.